Welcome to the Kick It Open podcast, where we celebrate bold moves and reveal the strategies shaping success in the wealth management industry. Our goal is to inspire you to kick the doors open on your personal success. I'm your host, Shelby Nicholl. All right, so I'm so excited to have this podcast with you, Stevyn. We are diving into a game-changing topic, and we are at a game-changing location right now. So for me personally, I'm in Marrakesh, Morocco, reporting live, so to speak. I know, it's so funny to say that, but it's really fun. And I think it's so fun to have this podcast because Stevyn Guinnip is the founder of Grow Wellthy, and she's an expert in helping financial advisors integrate wellness into their client conversations. And Stevyn, tell us where you are.
I'm in Madeira, Portugal. So we're in the same time zone.
Which I thought was so just fun and cool, and thought the listeners would enjoy that little fact. Hopefully I don't have too much road noise. It's absolutely beautiful here in Marrakesh, Morocco. It's a gorgeous day, and so we wanted to take advantage of that.
Yeah, sounds great.
We've had the opportunity to connect and chat a couple of times, and even having grown up in the same state in the U.S., which is really fun.
Yes.
Your work is so personal, and you have a new book launching on April 15th. So thought this was the perfect time for us to get together.
Yes.
Stevyn, tell us about your journey. How did you come to working with financial advisors and in the financial advisor sort of ecosystem?
Yeah. So my career is loosely started when I was 11 in the financial services industry, when my dad became a financial advisor, or it was a stockbroker back then. 1984 is when he started. And so I got to kind of watch this industry from the inside out as a fly on the wall, watching him work and hustle and grow a book of business, and to be rewarded for that over the years, and the stressors that come with that, the joys that come with it. Got to meet all of his colleagues and just kind of see it from the other side that a lot of advisors maybe don't see it from. I was on the inside. And then I was a teenager, and we went to Scotland, and we were on an awards trip, and that's where one of the bigwigs was there. And that bigwig was on the bus with me. Everybody wanted to be him, okay? Everybody wanted to aspire to be that. And he was slumped in a chair on the bus, just like miserable. And we're in Scotland, right? It's very cool. And he must have felt safe with me or something. He's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I just got bad news with my health. And that really registered with me as a kid. Like, okay, what is success? That's what I found myself asking. What is success? Like, everybody wants to be this guy, but he doesn't even want to be this guy, right? Like, he didn't want to be there. He had all the money, but he didn't have the health. He wasn't doing what he wanted to do. Well, fast forward a little bit, and I got to see really kind of two stories. A little bit of a play on, the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that book, but it's Well Dad, Sick Dad. And it's in my family. I had two dads, and I could see what would happen if someone had plenty of money, they got to retire when they wanted to, and they had a long retirement, and they both looked successful. But one of the people, the well dad, was out golfing, fishing, traveling to Europe, doing all the things, pickleball. And sick dad was spending his time sick, going to the doctor, going to dialysis, really couldn't leave his home. And that's a really powerful story for me personally, to want to help those people who mean the world to me. They're part of my DNA, right? These advisors, their families, their colleagues, their businesses, their book of business, their clients. I care about them. And if we only look at the numbers for retirement and we just say, hey, they have enough money, they're retired, they got to do what they want, but don't look at the actual quality of life that they have, I think we're missing a piece of that puzzle. So that's what I do and why I do it.
I think it's such an interesting story, and that you had these moments in your life that were so pivotal, right? That bus conversation, a very sort of random moment in some ways, but was a pivotal moment for you. And you really started your work in serving financial advisors directly, I believe, and then kind of urging them to address their own health issues. And then over time, it's grown to include content that advisors can talk with their clients about. Tell us
Yes.
about that sort of journey in that arc.
It's funny though, because it kind of took me a bit, like I had to be hit over the head a few times to realize that this was what I was supposed to do. Because I moved to Australia in 2014 and I was there launching a kettlebell program. And I had nothing to do at that time with the financial services industry. And I got sick. I was a healthy person, right? Like I was working out, I was doing all the things you're supposed to do to be healthy. I became septic, had to have an emergency hysterectomy.
Oh my
and
goodness.
Blood transfusion. I was in the hospital for 5 days. Took me 6 weeks to recover. Like it was really touch and go for a bit there. When I came out of that, I was very, very sick. I had no muscle tone. I had a poor gut health. All my hormones were gone. And I started gaining weight for 2 years. Every single month, I kept gaining weight. I worked out harder. I ate less. And I was like, this whole system is broken. This whole wellness system is broken. And so then I was like, oh, if I go back to the research and I look at what real health is, it has to do with sleep and lower stress and making sure you're getting enough margin in your life to have the energy to do the things without just like a lot of us, and especially people in the industry, financial industry, are pull yourself by the bootstraps kind of people, right?
Yes.
Get it done, task oriented, no matter what the cost is, work better under stress, night owls, right? Like they're just, they even have second work days. Like they'll work all day, they'll have dinner with the family, and they'll work again at night. And that was me. I wasn't in the financial services industry, but I went back to the research and I was like, this is destroying health. No matter if your exercise is perfect and your eating is perfect, this is destroying health. And so I was like, the true health is long-term, right? It's not days, it's decades. And that's really what we need to look at. And then I started to understand the parallels between financial planning and wellness planning, and they almost line up identically. So that's when I started talking the talk of wealth, right? Wellness, an abundance of wellness. Like the other wealth is an abundance of money, but there's still two parallel lines, like railroads that go down the track to your destination. And one of them is not being built. You're going to be derailed along the way. So I started teaching these concepts and working exclusively with financial advisors. And to get to your question, they started saying, well, hey, this is so important to my future. How do I get this point across to my book of business, to my clients, to add value to them, to make sure they're going to have a successful retirement without them having to be the expert or recreate the wheel of wellness, which they don't really need to do and shouldn't be doing, right? So that's where this new, pathway of services came from.
I mean, obviously, it's a beautiful arc and a beautiful story. I hate that you've, of course, had the illness that drove you to this work, right? And it led you to this research and it led you to this wonderful purpose. So I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about financial advisors and specifically, I think it's so interesting, this idea of the train being on the, two trains and going the same direction, hopefully, but one of them getting derailed, whether that be health or it be wealth. I never have thought about it that way, nor have I thought about the words that wealth, in the way that you're meaning it, as WELLTH, is in decades, not days.
Yeah.
Wow. Because I have gone through my spurts of working out and, all the things that we all do, right? But that's more in the spurts and not in the decades. That's incredible.
Well, it's interesting because so many financial advisors come to me and they say things like, they're almost frantic. They're almost panicked. Like, oh, my blood numbers are up or I'm gaining weight. Like, give me something quick to do. And I just kind of, pull on the reins a little and say, hey, if someone walked into your office and said they need to make money fast and play the market and get rich quick, what would you tell them? Right? This is the boring stuff, the long game, the simple, consistent compounding actions. And we're just taking those same thoughts and moving them to your health. And that's a light bulb moment for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And what about even phrases like diversification? That's even another one that we can apply in this way.
Yes. There's so many words that when I see financial people posting on LinkedIn, I'm like, I could have written the exact same post, except just change like health to money, just a couple of changes because they're so identical. But yeah, diversification, people are like, oh, I can't eat any carbs, or I have to be a cardio junkie, right? And only do this high intensity because that's what I'm supposed to do, or I have to fast. And there's so many things. It's all about balance, right? And it's all about allocation of your resources and energy into all of the buckets. And I put the buckets into 4 categories. I call it the hierarchy of wealth. It does matter what order you do them in, but it's all about getting your mind in the right place on the bottom level, how you think, your awareness, your planning, right? And then the next level is about how do you recover and mend, right? Your sleep, how do you deal with stress? And then you go to the next level, which is your food. How are you allocating your macros, right? Do you have something in each? I call it the CFPs, your carbs, fats, and your proteins, because that's where, people they get so like put all their money in one basket, like, oh, it's got to be protein or only fat, and it really, when you think in decades, you realize it's about what feels good, what's easy, what makes you feel good, and what you can see yourself doing when you're 88 years old. Future cast yourself. Are you going to be doing this when you're 88 years old? No, you're going to want to walk and get up off the floor. If you fall, you're going to want to have a good balanced meal, have good hydration habits. Like, it's really pretty basic stuff. And everyone wants to be, get rich quick. That's what they want to do with their health. And it's just not that. So so many parallels.
I have fell into that get rich quick scheme so many times on my health, right? The orange theory for 3 months and you're just hitting it hard every day, right? And to your point, you're not seeing that result, and especially for women, and especially as we age, right? It just all becomes different. I was talking to the hotel manager here in Marrakesh yesterday, and he made a comment about being now in his 40s and not being able to drink as much, right? That's a conversation I'm having with my girlfriends for sure, too. None of us can anymore, right? So it's interesting, too, how it adjusts over time.
Well, yeah, you think about it from a money perspective. Okay, you have a 20-year-old. They've got so many margins with their money that they don't have to be super strict yet. I mean, it's great if they are doing something, but as they get closer to retirement, they need to be more and more focused, and you can't turn that ship around overnight. The same thing is true with your health, right? When you're in your 20s, you can get away with a lot. You've got a lot of margin for your body to recover really, really well. But as we age, we kind of layer the stressors and the injuries and the things that happen in life, our bodies just don't recover as well. And you mentioned women. Oh my gosh, women, we have even more of a struggle if we get too far off course. It's hard to come back on like beyond 40, especially beyond 50 after hormones start to change again through peri and postmenopause. And so, yes, your body responds different to alcohol. It responds different to exercise. I've got a client who was killing herself exercising, and she was seeing no results. And she's like, okay, I'm 56 years old. I'm working out like a crazy person. I'm barely eating anything and I keep gaining weight. How is that even mathematically possible? Right. And it's all about the chemicals that are in your body and the environment that your body feels safe or it feels under threat. And so we just dialed back. We gave her more food. We dialed back her exercise and gave her, a little more sleep. And she starts losing weight like crazy. So she went from I think she was about 155, and she's like, if I could just get to 145, I'd be so happy. She's at 125 now, and she's doing less, eating more, and more peaceful, right? So there's not a magic bullet, but when the environment is fixed and you've got good automated habits, it doesn't have to be this doom and gloom that everybody's like, oh, this is just old age, or this is what a menopause body is like, or whatever. There's hope.
Yes, that's amazing. Well, I'm excited to hear that there's hope. I feel like I've been on, and my kids will even say this, that I've been on a diet my entire life. But I will say this year I'm taking it much easier about it, right? Definitely focusing on sleep, not as much drinking, walking, and yoga, and starting there. And it sounds like, okay, that's maybe okay for this time of life, this season.
Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
And I always tell clients, think of it in terms of taxes, right? Like, you've got this amount of health, and think of it as you've got this amount of money. Like, taxes pull away from what you already have. And that's what health taxes are. So how many taxes do you have in your life? Stress is probably one, not you, but people, right?
Yes.
Stress is one. Alcohol is a stressor. Exercise is actually a stressor. it's a eustress. Usually it does good, but it's still a stressor. And you can just kind of go on and on with a list of stressors. And so sometimes what we do is like, what taxes are there? Let's try to get a few of those removed. And the body's like, finally, I can breathe. I can recover and heal and do what I need to do to get better.
Yes. And I think so many in our generation and just in this industry, to your earlier point, we are stuck in a cycle of overwork, right? And we're stuck in a cycle of that stress, right? Whether it be, making a certain number of calls each week or whatever it is that you're trying to do in order to grow your business, that is a tax, to your point. It's creating some of that. I know another phrase you use is health debt. So it's creating some of that health debt, I would assume.
Yes. We can get into health debt by not getting enough sleep and the stressors, and your body doesn't quite recover. And then, you make a poor choice because you're feeling stressed, like you just drink more than you want or eat more than you want or have an extra couple cookies. And it's your body trying to regulate itself because it's not getting what it needs. And it's not helpful, but it's comfortable, right? It feels good. And that's what the system needs, is something to feel good. So I always tell my clients to become dopamine detectives. Find those things that make you feel good and are good for you and lean into those, because the path forward is not punishment. It's feeling good and looking for the things that draw you toward it. And so that's an important path, because people tend to think if you're not going to go hard, then go home, right? And it's just the complete opposite. I used to be in that camp. I would not take a yoga class. And I'm like, where is the sweating? Right? This does not matter. Like, this does not count. It totally counts. And that's just a reframing of the important, boring parts of staying healthy.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. So I want to bring it back to some things that you've been doing with financial advisors. So obviously you are coaching financial advisors, on their own health, right? And making that a focus because you really understand their business and their practices and maybe where the pain points and where those taxes might be. And then you're also providing content to them to use with their clients.
Yes.
For those who are using that content with their clients, what does that look like for them in their practice? Do they see results with that, or is it just something they feel called to do? Like, what does that look like?
For example, inside of that, it's called the Wealth Webinar Content Library. Inside the library, they have access to 4 pre-recorded health wealth connection webinars that I've done that take the data, they take the stories and put it all together for a client-facing experience. So I'll just give you an example. One of my advisors in Colorado, he uses it. So when a new client comes in, he might say, use this particular video to say, watch this and we'll have a conversation next time on your health, because I want to be a resource for you to help you look at your money through lots of different lenses, and health is one of those lenses. So they'll send it, he will send it out to his clients and have them watch it. And the emails he gets back is like, no advisor I've ever worked with before has looked at my money through what's important to me is how I live my life in my retirement. This is a whole new concept for me. And they're just so grateful. And I always joke that my job is to make the advisor the hero, right? To bring up ways that's not about just your returns on your investment, right? It's not your money increasing, because that's almost a commodity at some level, right? It's so the ability to create more money is just one piece of the puzzle. But how can we make sure that you have the life that you're looking for? And so we have 4 conversations inside of this portal that they can actually access to. And it's called the Health is Wealth Conversation Guide. So they can use the webinars to send out the link. They can use this Health is Wealth Conversation Guide, and it gives them 4 conversation starters that take about 15 minutes each, where they can be like, okay, here's the 4 pillars of a good retirement, right? This is from retirees. We have research from AgeWave and Edward Jones, AgeWave and Merrill Lynch, and different studies that have happened over the years. And it's like, okay, this is what retirees say, is that these 4 things are most important. Which of these things do we need to make sure you have in place for your retirement? And those are valuable conversations, right?
Yes.
And so that's just one example. You know, we have several other conversation starters too. And then all of this stuff is transcribed and all of it is put into customizable Canva digital cards that you can post on social media. And so it just gives them lots of information to write blog posts or do their own newsletters or whatever. So they have content to connect the dots between health and wealth.
Well, and I've got to believe that this is a differentiating set of content for them as well, right? It's one that is of very high value to clients, but it's also one that it's not talking about the RMD calculations or the 529 or the gifting calculations, right? It's a little bit different and distinct, and that is one that they can really bring their whole heart to.
Right.
Is that how they're approaching it? And do you see these advisors as being different somehow than other advisors maybe who aren't using this content?
Yes. And it's interesting because the ones who are working with me individually on their own health are not usually the ones who are using this content library. They're usually two separate groups of people. Yeah. So the ones who come and work with me, they have like blood work or body composition or something that they're really wanting to, like they need help getting to a better place. So we work together for 3 months. We get them to a better place. We get them a roadmap forward. And then they dump into our Wealth Club, which is the group where we encourage each other. It's all financial people in there. And we have so much fun. But those people are on a health journey. The ones who are in this content library are already healthy. They're the ones who are already, this is part of their, how they see themselves. And they want to infuse their practice with a culture of wellness and don't want to have to create that, right? So they're using this content because it aligns with their own belief systems in their practice.
Are you a financial advisor ready for a big leap? Making the decision to leave your firm, whether it's a broker-dealer or an RIA, can feel like stepping into the unknown. Muriel Consulting provides personalized, unbiased support to help you navigate transformational career moves with confidence and confidentiality. Schedule a discovery call at murielconsulting.com. MURIEL consulting.com.
It's so interesting that you're saying these people are kind of drawn that way. It really made me think about one of my first podcast guests was this woman, Melissa Reichenwald. She's an advisor. She's been growing this really hyper growth practice, but she takes a real sort of therapeutic money story approach to her practice. And obviously that's a very different sort of approach than what you're seeing with the people who are using your health content, right? It almost, you can start to see the personalities of the advisors really coming through, and maybe that's based on who they're attracting to their practice, who they are as people, et cetera.
It's part of their identity. They want to build this into the culture, and they're like people who maybe did football in college. There's even one guy who's climbing Mount Everest that's an advisor right now, right? Like, or they were personal trainers in the past, and that's part of who they are. They like to have those conversations, and it's something that can be a little bit weird because honestly, when I tell advisors what this topic is about, they either get it or don't get it. There's nothing in the middle. They're either like, what in the world? Why would I ever bring up health in a money conversation? And then there's the other group. It's like, this makes perfect sense, right?
Wow.
Because a lot of people understand that your money is a tool to get you what you want, and that your health is a tool to get you what you want. It's freedom, right?
Yes.
I always talk about really what I do is I give people freedom. And that's freedom to move their bodies, move about their town, serve other people, freedom to move around the globe like you and I are doing right now. You can't do that when you have limitations with your health.
That's right.
And so those are things like if someone's like, hey, I want to travel the world after I retire, that should be something that the advisor who understands these things can say, all right, if that's what you want to do on this continuum of health, where is your health right now? Where would you put yourself? And if they say, oh, I'm like a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10, if that's your future, what you want to do we want to talk about some options for you to find a trainer or, whatever the solutions might be? But that just makes them go, oh, yeah, you're right. Like if I want to be walking all through Europe, I need to be able to walk well.
Right.
But then again, advisors don't want to be the expert in this. They don't want to be like giving advice, right? All they want to be is bring up the conversation and spark the ideas so people can then go and find the solution that's right for them. And it can get a little bit weird too, like between a man and a woman, you know, gender differences and advice with health and different things. And so there are nuances in there that this content allows for and keeps it very high level so you don't get into the weeds and make it super uncomfortable. Because some advisors are like, Stevyn, there's no way I'm going to be like, Mr. Jones, you need to lose some weight. Let's get this going. You know, this is going to affect your future. You never, ever do that, obviously, right? It's all about the person self-assessing. How are they happy where they are? What do they want to do next? And framing it always with money in mind. And so, for example, let's say on that scale of 1 to 10, if they're like on a 3 on their health, then there's a certain set of financial conversations you want to have, right?
Yes,
You know, end of life stuff, documents, whatever, you know. You don't want to be too obvious about it, but that does inform the advisor what they need to make sure is in place. But if they're up at like a 9 on their health, like that person's ready to go. Like, let's look at hobbies, second houses. Do you have enough income for your future? And it just develops some really awesome financial conversations without getting weird.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was thinking about that getting weird, right? I'm thinking, gosh, even just a mixed gender experience, right? My male advisor telling me, you know, that I maybe need to get healthier. I could see that like not going over so well. Yeah, so to your point, like we want to open the conversation. We want to have the conversation, but we don't need to be too directive about it, right?
Or solve it. We don't need to solve it. We just need to say your health affects your money and your money affects your health. These two things are connected. Let's just know that, right?
Yeah, let's know that. And do the work now to make sure you're doing all the testing that you should be doing and things like that, right? It's just a little nudge. And sometimes people just need a nudge to get healthy too, right? To
and
go
knowing,
have the test.
Like what we talked about, decades versus days, right? Like we're not looking at today for your health. We're looking at your health in 2, 3, 4, 5 decades down the future. What is that going to be like? How can we protect and grow that health just like you would protect and grow your money? And if you don't, it will erode. It's like inflation. As you age, your health erodes. And so it's going to happen. We just have to figure out how to do it. How can we keep more of our money and manage that inflation or aging that's going to be happening as we go? And those are just, they're hard conversations. But when I was interviewing people for this book, the one that's launching soon, you know, one advisor came to me and she's like, if I could go back in time, Stevyn, I needed this information. Because I worked with this couple for 2 decades, for 20 years, and I helped them prepare for retirement. We knew what they wanted to do when they retired. Get a new living room set and travel the world. They could not wait to get started. And then when he did retire, they went to the furniture store the next day, picked out their new living room set, and he had a heart attack and died right there.
Oh, my gosh.
She's like, I know we can't change the future, predict the future, but if I had just brought up the idea that their health is the silent partner in all of their plans, right? That we can't ignore that because it can derail, like we were talking earlier, your plans.
And you can be afraid to bring it up. It reminds me, and I know we've talked about this when we've connected in the past, like reminds me of life insurance conversations. And you know, years and years ago, probably 10 years now, I was doing marketing research at Edward Jones and talking with advisors, talking with investors. And like a third of people fundamentally do not want to have a conversation about insurance because it's so connected to death. Well, and I've got to think it's probably something similar here, but this is where financial advisors, this is part of, I always thought for insurance at least, it was part of like why you get paid what you get paid, right? Like, this is why financial advisors earn and deserve to make the money that they do is because they're having the tough conversations. Right. And so to that advisor's point, right? If she'd had this information, it had a framework maybe for having the tough conversation, she could have had it. And that's what you're providing. That is life-changing for so many advisors and for clients.
Well, it's funny because if you ask somebody, like, what is your plan for when you age? And they're like, I've got life insurance and I've got long-term care insurance.
Right.
Done, right? And I always am like, well, that's your safety net.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
That's a worst case scenario, but what is your quality of life if you're dead? None, right? What is your quality of life if you're on long-term care insurance? Probably not that great either. So let's keep those as your safety nets, but it's like asking how long you think you're going to live versus how long you're going to live well. And that's the difference between health span and sick span, right? And nobody wants to live a long time in sick span. We want to extend your health and shrink down that sick span. And that's where, because sick span is where you lose your money and your quality of life really bottoms out. So if we can do anything to live well longer, that's really what we're trying to do.
Yes.
And that's a conversation that I think a financial advisor is so well equipped for and perfectly placed to have those conversations.
Absolutely. And it sounds as if the woman that you interviewed for your book, she really recognized that that is a place that she can kind of dive into and lean into.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more. I thought it was interesting. You said you interviewed her for your book. Tell us a little bit more about your book. What can advisors expect from it? How will we use it inside of a practice, et cetera?
Yes. Okay. So I interviewed 508 financial advisors for this book. It took me 1.5 years to do that.
Wow.
And I asked them a series of questions, trying to understand what they wanted, what their stress levels were like, what their health was like, just different things like that, their most pressing questions. And I used that information, obviously, to inform how I coach clients, but to write this book and to create essentially a playbook that's based on how do we connect those dots, the health wealth connection, and have a playbook that is a financial framework where we can understand that it's just a skill transfer from money to health, right? And we just have it's a different asset. And it walks through these 4 levels that we just talked about and how to understand the principle behind it, but then how to understand the practice. What do you do then? And interweaving all of the financial conversations and stories I've had. And, one of the people that I tell his story in there, he said after losing 90 pounds, and he has a booming business, okay, very successful financial advisor. After losing 90 pounds, he's like, Stevyn, I did not realize, I thought you were either onto something or crazy. Right? Because I knew all the health stuff and I was already exercising. I was already eating really well. I didn't think you had anything for me. And when we realized that he was missing level 2, which is the recovery part, the mending, the stress and sleep part, everything like dominoes fell into place and he lost 90 pounds. Okay. His body finally was working well. And he's like, I realize now that when my wife kept wanting me to go and hike, I thought I didn't like to hike. Now that I weigh 90 pounds less, I love to hike. And they've been all over the world doing extreme global hiking. And he's like, I never would have known that about myself. I thought it was just I didn't like to do it. So, I mean, it just gave him back his life, which makes me feel so good. So that's what the book does. It tells stories of advisors who've seen successes and gives them that 4-step framework to be able to apply it to their own lives. And then it gives them conversations to have with their own clients as well.
I'm so excited to read it. It's coming out on, I think you said April 15th or thereabouts.
Fingers crossed, yes.
Fingers crossed, right? Right as tax season ends, it's time to get healthy, folks. So
yes.
It's perfect. Perfect timing for turning that tax chapter behind us and now leaning into summer and health. So
yes.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to read it.
Thank you so much. I am too. It's probably been a 4-year process, like from the conception. And one of my clients was the one who said, Stevyn, nobody's looking at health through this lens. Like, write a book. And I'm like, are you crazy? I am not writing a book. And here we are.
Well, I'm so glad you are. And I think that client was absolutely right. Nobody is looking at it from this exact angle, right? The closest thing I can think about is like Lynn Twist's book around the soul of wealth. And only because it talks about the Latin, I think it was, of the word wealth and how that means actually well-being, And so, you're really leaning into that aspect, obviously, of it.
Well, and there's a quote that I love, and I don't know who said it, but it's basically A well person has 1,000 dreams and a sick person has one.
Oh, yes.
To get better, right?
Right.
You could even flip it. You could even say a well person has 1,000 problems that they have to solve. And a sick person has only one that they want solved. That's it. And everything else falls away. And so there's two takeaways here. One of them is, if you can think about what would happen in your life if you broke your leg today, what would have to fall away and what would you fight to keep in your life and make sure that it stays when things aren't quite perfect, right? That gives you a really good idea of what's maybe too much in your life so that you can then find the time, which is not really it. It's a priority thing, right? To give yourself the downtime and the sleep and the rest and the walk outside and the stuff that you need. So that's one thing, is like, just take a really hard look and assess your life. I spoke to an advisor when I was speaking at an FPA event in Georgia, and he was a super duper high top performer, tripled his business during COVID, was just going gangbusters. He never ate at home with his family. They had a huge master kitchen that was like fancy, I don't know, the top kitchen you can have, but they ate out every meal. Every meal they ate out, and they never had any meals together. And his goal was to buy a bigger house and grow his business further. Okay, his health was failing and his family was suffering. And so my request for anybody listening here is just ask yourself, when is enough enough? Both for money, your relationships, your purpose, and your health, those 4 pillars of a really great retirement. When is enough enough? Because the carrot is always like, I'll just get to the next level. But don't, look at the real cost, right? Is your health eroding faster and it's going to derail you anyway? Are the things that are important to you and, need to be addressed? So that's one thing I would say. You take a hard look at your life and assess it. Then the next thing is, if you don't know where to start, I would just say start with the 3 W's. Okay, hold up 3 fingers and it makes a W, right?
Yes.
And start with water, start with walking, and lift some heavy stuff, some weights, right? If you can just do a little bit every week in those areas, in 6 weeks, I promise you will see results you would be shocked at if you just do those 3 things.
I think that's a perfect place to end. Thank you so much. I have a few kind of quick hit questions that we always do.
Sure.
But definitely holding up the W, that is going to stick. All right. So our quick hit questions that we always end at. I don't know. I'm so old that I remember Vogue, following around celebrities in their home and asking these really quick questions. So that's where this comes from. So, all right. What is one thing that you wish every financial advisor knew about health?
I wish they knew that they need to get down on the floor and up off the floor every single day. It's called a get up. I want them to know that they should still do it. They're not too old, and they should be able to do it when they're 88 years old. Get on the floor and get back up today and every day.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I can appreciate that. And I love your LinkedIn videos on that. Is that the one wellness practice that you would swear by, or is there another one that you would swear by?
The one wellness practice, is this the second question?
Yeah.
The one wellness practice I would swear by is walking after a meal.
Oh,
really? I mean, I promise you right now, I have on my arm a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, and I can see on my phone exactly what my blood sugar is doing. And it has been so eye-opening. I know this research, but to see the research in action is that if you go for a walk for 15 minutes after a meal, your blood sugar spike is cut in half. If you just stroll, it's cut in half. And they're like, okay, well, who cares if it's cut in half? Your insulin cares. That's who cares. And when insulin has to come in and save the day so much, all that food is going to go into storage, and you're going to just keep gaining fat because insulin is telling your body to store. So we have to keep the blood sugar spike down so insulin can rest, and you're not going to keep storing more fat. That's one I swear by.
Absolutely fascinating how the science of that works. All right, because we're in different locations, what is your favorite travel destination?
Right now, I'm going to say my favorite travel destination is to go back to the States and hug my family.
Of course. My son today said that he could live in Marrakesh if it weren't for all of our family back home.
Yes.
You know?
That has been the hardest part of us being here. Other than that, We've been to Ireland. We're going to England in a few weeks to do a Harry Potter tour.
How fun.
I know. My daughter loves Harry Potter. And then we're going to go see Downton Abbey and some of the big houses in England. So I love travel, but going back home is really fantastic.
Oh, I can appreciate that. Stevyn, this was an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. For our listeners, I hope this inspires you to just think about your own health. I know it has mine as well as your wealth journey. We're kicking doors open every single day here on the Kick It Open podcast. So thank you, Stevyn, for being part of this journey. And thank you, listeners.
So much. Yes, for sharing this story and spreading this news. So appreciate you.
All right. Well, to everyone, until next time, see you soon. Thanks for listening to the Kick It Open podcast. The Kick It Open podcast is hosted and developed by Muriel Network. Kick It Open is produced by Shelby Nicholl, edited by Aaron Sherman, graphic designed by John Gallagher. If you found today's podcast valuable, please help us out by subscribing and sharing with your friends. Just click that little plus sign or the follow button wherever you get your podcasts.